Probably nobody here.
Hey, look at that.
Peanut Gallery Assemble. I love it. Wait, I'm gonna randomly pick an intro.
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
Nice. Thank you, Nick Lambert, for the jingle. Do they still call them jingles? Intro music?
I think it's a jingle. We'll call it a
A
jingle.
jingle, a tinkle.
Yeah.
Oh man, look at the peanut gallery. So we're back. We took a little bit of a break. It's been weird. Things have been weird, and we needed some
Weird
time.
couple of weeks.
And but you know what? I've had another. I've had a pretty weird week this week, but I've been really looking forward to this. So there was the week before I was like, I'm kind of glad we took the week off. I kind of needed the downtime, and then the opposite happened this week where I was like, oh, my calendar is suddenly very open except for Wednesday afternoon, and I'm pretty excited about that. So
Here's to that, Paul.
yeah, cheers. Cheers.
Cheers,
Oh,
man.
boop. Little drinky. This is beer number 2, folks. So strap in. Um, we were talking a little bit before the show. When we first thought about this concept of this show, when I first talked to you about it, it was just for you and me, and we're just going to talk about stuff we want to talk about in this industry. And we want to
Right.
maybe help people once in a while, maybe answer their questions, and let's just see what happens.
Right.
One thing I did not expect that has been a wonderful development is the community part of this. So
Really.
we started
Yeah.
the Discord, and the Discord it's relatively quiet. By the way, if you'd like to join our Discord, it's chat.xrtalk.net. And people are getting their questions answered. There's starting to be job opportunities posted there, but we've really started to get to know the community of people, and in particular the peanut gallery that they've coined for themselves, has become a big part of the show. And so the cool thing for me is we have another guest today, and the guest is coming from the community. So this is the first guest we've had that it wasn't somebody we've worked with before, we knew from before. This is
Right.
someone that you know just was recommended to us, and we're like, oh my god. Not First of all, not only do they live in Portland, and I thought we knew everyone in Portland working on this stuff by now. And there's new
But
people every day.
they're in our community.
But yeah, and then so we invited Steven, and we're gonna invite Steven into the show right now. Welcome,
Hey.
Steven. Hey.
Like mid drink.
Yeah, I waited for you to start drinking before I transitioned you in. It was a trick. That was a dirty trick. Yeah, thank you so much. We somebody tagged us on Twitter, and I said, hey, come in our Discord, and you immediately signed up, and right away I could tell that you're really into this. You're a maker, creator. You're doing all this stuff, and you were answering questions and asking questions, and I was just really excited that you were willing to be on our show. So thank you so much
Oh
for
yeah, yeah.
joining us.
Thanks for having me. I mean, it's this past couple of weeks has definitely been very, very interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Especially sort of like my AR journey, my journey into AR, and really sort of like the creative tech area. You know, it's definitely been it's if you're familiar with sort of the sexy curve. And so
Mhm.
the sexy curve is where you keep trucking along, just focusing on things, and then at some point it clicks, and then things just shoot up.
Yeah, the hockey
And
stick.
so that's definitely reflective of sort of my experience really right now. This is I'm
That's
definitely
awesome, dude.
enjoying the sexy curve.
Yeah, totally. Well, so what would you like people intro yourself? Tell us who you are and what you want people to know about you, and
Okay.
we'll chop it up.
Yeah. So I'm originally from I'm Steven Christian. I am originally from California. I grew up in the Bay Area in Sacramento, and I really just have been sort of like a art enthusiast, a tech enthusiast. But I was originally a football player. Played football in college. Sort of the stereotypical you know like a black guy that's 6'1", that knows sports and was able to get opportunities from that. And so I ended up getting a athletic scholarship to the University of Hawaii, and from there I ended up having 2 hip surgeries, and that sort of forced me to refocus on what I can do with my time and my energy. Because I think I had my second hip surgery before I was 21. Or no, I had my second hip surgery on my 21st birthday. And
Oh,
so
dude.
the perfect, the perfect birthday present for myself. And so I really sort of had to take a step back and say, like, okay, what can I do that goes beyond just like me just sacrificing my body for opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started to get into art and creativity. And I was also a Windows mobile developer when Windows Mobile was like a thing. And so, when they thrashed that whole project, when they converted to Windows Phone, and then they ultimately just said screw it. I was like, dang, I don't want to be an Apple developer. I don't want to have to like relearn stuff. And so I was familiar with like Photoshop and everything, and so I just started to shift gears to more of the creative side rather than like the tech side.
Right.
And so from there, I'm a big Boondocks fan, and so I just I dove deep into sort of like visual storytelling and comics and animation because everybody that I know is everybody that I played with and everybody that I like grew up with was big like Dragon Ball Z fans, and so everybody when we ever get the opportunity, we want to make our own Dragon Ball Z, and so that was sort of like where my mind went. And so as I graduated from University of Hawaii, and then I got into Oregon State, and that's how I ended up being in Oregon. Because I got into Oregon State, I decided to continue playing football, even though I probably shouldn't have after having 2 hip surgeries. And I got into a master's program, and so I ended up in the Masters of Arts and Interdisciplinary Studies. Ended up studying like fine arts, sports psychology, and exercise sports science, and I really focused on sort of the visualization and the visual representation of African American student athletes and why they're more likely to have success on the field rather than off the field. Even though they're able to have success and make millions of dollars with their craft, why is it that they can't pick up a book and like do the same thing or something comparable with their mind? And so, that's sort of to, playing as a football player and, making comics for the newspaper and all these things sort of to just like compound my interests and just add to those experiences. And then when I finished and retired, then I sort of gone down this road of like student athlete activism and just like this sort of intersection of like race and opportunities and dealing with like the creative side and the tech side and reckoning with my with a lot of just like my background and my experiences as a football player. And so then I ended up taking a year off, moving to LA and making a documentary that ended up getting featured on the Last Week Tonight show with John. And
nice.
So if anybody watches John Oliver and you look up the NCAA episode that he has, that's the documentary that I worked on.
Oh, wow.
So it was like me, a group of former student athletes, and we sort of explored, we're like the only documentary to explore what it's like to, the business of college athletics.
Yep.
And so like that sort of came opportunities. But then I realized that like, being a freelancer when you don't have any like work portfolio is really tough, especially in LA.
Yep.
And so then I said, okay, well, I've always had this sort of drive to sort of like pursue medicine, but I've never really given myself the opportunity to. And so yeah, I moved. I had a Mini Cooper at the time. I had a conversation with my dad, and I said, hey, I think I'm going to move to Portland, try to get into medical school at OHSU. And so I got like a credit card for like $9,000. I packed up my Mini Cooper and I just drove up to Portland. and
Hell
I've
yes.
like been up here ever since. I've been up here ever since. And I have like connections with Oregon State and everything. So that's really big. I mean, you tell somebody that you played football for the Beavers and people are like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
But I came up here to try to get into OHSU, but I didn't anticipate, Portland being the comic book capital of the world,
Yeah.
and like this sort of hub for creativity and tech, and sort of that happy medium. Because coming from the Bay Area, you think it's just like Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
and then,
You know what?
but
I was equally as surprised when I came up
yeah,
here, like at how much, not necessarily like Silicon Valley kind of tech, but
yeah,
the more the creative tech stuff. There,
right.
it's everywhere. It's amazing.
Like it didn't make any sense to me, and mind you, like I didn't anticipate any of this stuff. Uh, and on top, like the only thing that I thought about was like, okay, I'm able to live in Portland and comparable to Bay Area prices because my dad my family's from Richmond, and
Yep.
so my dad lives in El Cerrito right now, and so it's like I could either stay with my dad in El Cerrito and pay like $5,000 a term to go to school there,
Yeah.
or I could go to Portland and pay $3,000 and live comfortably.
Hmm.
So then I was like, okay, I will I will definitely do that, and I wouldn't be living at home, so you get that sort of autonomy and
Yeah.
stuff like that. but
Yeah.
but it really, the only thing I was thinking about outside of like being able to do stuff in Portland, um, in like medicine, was I could go to Mount Hood and it wouldn't take me 4 or 5 hours to get to the snow.
Right.
So I was just thinking like I'll just be able to like go snowboarding all the time.
Yeah.
And so as I started to like dive deeper into sort of like the comic book community and making connections and sharing my work and really just exploring sort of that medicine and art thing, I've always really I've had this trouble trying to figure out how to incorporate technology into it,
Hmm.
and how to
Right.
incorporate technology into it, for convention purposes, because sort of like the for Black creators in general, like the convention circuit is sort of like just it's changed the game for being able for Black creators to like share what their work is and stuff, because there just aren't a lot of publishing opportunities.
Right.
And so when I talk to people and say, hey, I'm an animator, and this is the work that I do, they could see the comic books, they could see the books, but it's really difficult for them to like see animation and
Yeah.
experience the way you want it to,
Yeah, that makes
outside of
sense.
like a screen and stuff. And so or like a YouTube link. And so I was like, how do I make it so that I could sell, or I could give people animation without them having to like go to a link and need internet connection.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to Adobe MAX last November. Yeah, so I ended up going to Adobe MAX in November, and they were having it on my birthday. Like the first day was my birthday, so I was like, yes, birthday present. And
That's a
and
better birthday present than a hip replacement.
right,
Yeah.
I had to make up for it. And but I just wanted to go because I've always wanted to go to that place. And so I finally went, and the big thing that they were talking about was AR. I think it's because Arrow was just released,
Yeah.
and they were for Adobe. I really appreciate that like Adobe has been very forward with like, okay, these are creative tools that you could use to explore your creativity. And so it allowed me to actually like see it from that lens of like, okay, as a creator, this is how you use AR. Well, first, this is AR,
Right.
and then second, this is how you use AR. And I it really sort of like resonated with me. And then sort of like the icing on the, I guess there's two icings on the cake. The icing on the cake number one is that I make all my books. And so I design them, I illustrate them, I write them, and I print them out, and I actually like cut them and find all that stuff. And so if anybody like follows me on Twitter, you'll see a whole bunch of you'll see a whole bunch of stuff of me just like making books, and I just have a whole bunch of books. But I ran into the paper distributor, the paper maker that I use, and I thought that they were just on Amazon. Like they're just one of those like
Yeah.
sketchy Amazon
Yeah.
companies
Just
that
a
you just
just
get,
a
like,
seller.
cheap stuff from.
Right.
And they had a booth there. And so I was like, oh, snap, I didn't know you guys actually like existed, And so
You're not
That's so
you're not
amazing.
or a Chinese, like a Chinese warehouse with a name.
it's crazy. I was literally baffled. I was like, dude, I didn't even know you guys actually existed. And so I was talking to the rep, And I was like, yeah, like there's this AR thing. I use you guys as paper, and I'm really trying to implement, ways like digital technology into my physical books, for like conventions and stuff. Um, and then the one of the reps was like, hey, I'm a children's author, and have you like about like augmented reality because of that? And we did like a little promo thing for a children's book that I did where we implemented augmented reality in it. And so she gave me the book, and she was like, you download this app and you shine it over, and it's a children's book. And I was like, I saw it, I was like, this is exactly what
Nice.
I'm like trying to do right now.
Yeah.
And so when I got back,
something that Paul and I have talked about a lot about is how, like what you just said earlier about like this is AR. Like a lot of times when we're showing people AR, they don't get it at first. They don't really understand how it works. And what you're doing with having the book, just point the phone at the book, and that's a really super simple way of getting someone to do it and then understand it. And if they move a little bit, they'll be like, oh, holy shit, it's a 3D thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a great way of kind of baby stepping people into the AR thing.
Yeah, it's just been crazy because okay, so I take it back. My first introduction to AR was from The Breakfast Club. So from The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God and Angela Yee and DJ Envy. So they had Will I Am and the Black Eyed Peas on there.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like 2-3 years ago. 2-3 years ago. And it's when the Black Eyed Peas did that AR graphic novel.
Yep.
And hands down, like if anybody has never seen the Black Eyed Peas graphic novel with Marvel, like they definitely, for any hip hop heads that appreciate like hip hop, LL Cool J, Queen Latifah, all that stuff, and they appreciate comics, definitely I would check that out. But they were like demoing it, and they're demoing sort of like what augmented reality is or how they're using it in their books, and they did a horrible job marketing it, like the worst job possible for like this is like that's a
probably because the marketing team didn't know what it was, like
yes, it was,
which is
was
always
like
the problem.
literally like this is what you don't do when you try to market an AR project. But that thing sort of that resonated with me, but I didn't really know where to start. And so when I got to Adobe MAX, that really sort of like solidified an approach that I needed to take, or at least it gave me sort of a stepping stone to go off of. And then I actually just like reached out to the rep afterwards, because she gave me a card. I was like, hey, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. I showed her like some of my work, and she really gave me like some resources to point to of like videos and stuff. And she just said, hey, this is the stuff that we use to get started. And see what you take from there. And then
so she pointed you at like Arrow and stuff like that.
No, she didn't. She pointed me in the direction of making my own app, because that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so it was I was familiar with like Arrow and stuff, but it was really sort of just the foundation of like image tracking.
Yep.
And being able to create an AR rather than using a platform that supports AR. I think it's being able to create in AR much like I would create in like Photoshop or anything, and then putting it out.
So what was that?
Using Unity or whatever, and actually building your own app gives you a lot more freedom.
And that's what I was getting. What was it? Vuforia, Unity, that type of
Yeah. So what I did is she sort of gave me not necessarily the tools, but she gave me sort of like the things to look into and the direction to go. And then this was like around December, like beginning of December, when Udemy has like all their not so random sales.
Yeah.
Where they get like where you find stuff for like $11. I just found like an AR course for on like Vuforia. Well, I found an AR course, and it just happened to be for Vuforia.
Mm-hmm.
But I found an AR course, paid $11 for it. I spent like a month and a half just like diving deep into it and going through it. And then after that, I felt a lot more comfortable playing around with the tools without the resources. And then I just started creating in it. And I started essentially trying to recreate what I saw in the Masters of the Sun graphic novel, where they had 3D models, they had all these things. and then with when all of the like coronavirus stuff started to hit, then it really gave me an opportunity to explore with like the Unity Premium
Hmm.
and Unity Learn stuff. It gave me an opportunity to explore um, really Unity
Yeah.
and like the Unity timeline and all the stuff that all the animation tools that Unity has that like are starting to pick up, but people really don't use that stuff yet. Um, it really started to I really started to explore all that stuff, and so now, like Unity, I use Unity for like animation. I use Unity for
Oh
all
my
these
God,
things,
you
and
do?
I implement.
I mean, are there good animation tools available in Unity? Because I mean, that timeline just drives me
Are you
nuts.
serious? Like, look at I literally so all of my books, if anybody like goes to my website
Let's
and
plug
and
that.
and,
What
and yeah,
Yeah,
so
is?
illtopia.com. If anybody goes to illtopia.com and you scroll down to where the actual book, so like, yeah, where you saw Augmented Reality app, you could do the free AR download, and it's pretty much like the first 8 pages of my graphic novel, and I literally built all the integration into using the timeline on that. And so it's an image tracker. It's image tracking using Vuforia, and then I scripted everything so where the cover of the book has cover of the book. You could choose all the different dances for for a different character. I might add a character controller onto it, and then from there
I love this
you
bear.
you, you essentially watch the book. You could
Oh, wait
watch
a
the
minute.
book.
You did all that animation, that little character right there, on the timeline?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well,
Like
the only thing.
Unity is amazing for like Unity. If anybody is used to like Blender, and if anybody is used to like Cinema 4D and all that, like Unity is blowing people out of the water that they don't even know it. Like it's a I wouldn't say that I'm not the best 3D animator. Like that's something that like when people think about like, oh, I will eventually touch After Effects because that's just a beast. That's how I feel about 3D animation. But I know my way around just animation in general, and I know my way about around like tech stuff. And
Props, dude. I mean, that's amazing.
I mean,
I've
I was.
always.
It's just props because like I can't touch the not the animation view in Unity, but the animator view with the state machine.
oh, I love that. Oh my
I
gosh.
it's
Like
it's fine except it reliably hard crashes my machine about
oh
every third time that I open. Like
yeah.
the
Like
it's the buggiest corner of Unity that like in the past year that
Actually,
I get
Paul,
into.
I wrote to, because I kind of complained about it on Twitter, and I got a ping back from them, and they said, hey, give us a call and let us know. So I wrote to them and I said, hey, here's a
Really?
crash, and basically by the end of the thing, they were like, yeah, just don't do that.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
It's like,
Yeah,
I
don't
doctor,
run with
doctor, it hurts when I do
animator
this.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
and I live right next to Union Station, and so every like 45 minutes apparently like there's a new train that likes to test its masculinity. And so it would just like out of nowhere it just be like it would just be just honking for no reason. and uh disregard the trains in the background.
Dude,
oh,
that's
it's all
some
good.
flavor though. That really is.
That's all
That's
good.
cool.
And
yeah,
then,
but
and
it's
this is your
I think
portfolio site, right? This is stuck on an island.
yeah. So this is the stuff that I used to do this is the stuff that I did when I was in LA. And so for anybody that's familiar with like Michael Blackson and like Rip Michaels and Brandon T. Jackson, I feel like most people would know like who Brandon T. Jackson is, but because I'm a big Tropic Thunder fan and he was a black guy,
Hmm.
the real black guy, not Robert Antini. But I had the opportunity to work with them on creating just a whole bunch of different like skits, and then I just tell stories visually, and I think for me it's always just trying to find the ways to incorporate really like animation, use animation through a cultural lens, and by cultural lens I mean just add black people to it,
Yeah.
and so for me it's just it's always been a great way to explore, and it's created opportunities. to, work with, like, I work with Portland State, work with OHSU, work with Oregon State, on a creative level. So now it's, kind of just coming full circle in terms of, where all my interests and experiences sort of intersect into. So it's great.
So there was a couple comments earlier. I think David mentioned the Shifter comic book. And
Shifters.
yes, I think, in general, like we talked a little bit about this in the Discord, like I think for the very reasons you pointed out, which I never really thought about, people wanting to, like, the artists that make comic books also having a desire to show how they envision things in motion. And there's always been, in my experience, a really a repeating connection between comic books and augmented reality. And I think, I mentioned it in the Discord, but like our time at Magic Leap, first of all, before Magic Leap was even really a company, the first thing Roni did was made a comic book that he hired Weta to, like, bring to life. Right. It was in, like, you can find, if you search YouTube for, like, Roni Abovitz Comic-Con, he's there. He's at Comic-Con in, like, 2011 or something like that, way before Magic Leap was a formal entity, and, like, showing off it was called the Hour Blue. I actually have one of the Hour Blue books, and through that we got to know Andy Lanning and Ant Williams, who became employees of the company, and we had, like, they made comic books about the Magic Leap story. And then later on, we had partnerships with Madefire, which does their motion books app on iPad and iPhone. And there's just always been this, like, very consistent. I think a lot of people think, like, these graphic novels and these books are just so visual and engaging. And there's, like, the extreme conversion of that to 3D, which is like the Marvel movies. But then there's this in between, which is, like, more on the physical side with the AR content that, it allows you to see this content in a slightly different way, but it's still true to the original content, or it can be. And so, like, has that continued to progress in the other thing I used to say about working with Ant and Andy in particular was I felt really guilty because while I appreciate comic books, I've never been a consistent comic book enthusiast. And like, I'm working with people that, like, I know people that are deep in the industry, like, really admire. And I love those guys. I appreciated working with them, but it wasn't like I was working with someone that I had followed for a long time. But, like, have you seen really good examples other than the work you've done, or, like, are you seeing, is it trending at all? Like, is this something that people are becoming more and more aware of because of, like, Snapchat and Instagram? Like, is there some sort of growth there?
No.
That's totally fair answer.
I say that because I live in Portland, and my one person that I regularly connect with is David Walker, who's, like, Mr. Black Superheroes Matter himself, and who's working on the book Naomi with Brian Michael Bendis, and he's pretty much, like, the influential one of the influential writers on Luke Cage for Marvel and Cyborg. And I say that from the standpoint of knowing Brian Michael Bendis as a teacher and, as sort of somebody I look up to. There has been in the comic book industry in and of itself, they're still trying to figure out how to sell digital comics.
Right.
And that is something that has been notoriously, the digital aspects of comic books in that industry have been notoriously underutilized, and people just don't know what to do. Perfect example is that, like, Marvel has a line of augmented reality covers. No one knows about those.
Right.
How do you even access that? Like, I think it's when we're talking about sort of the mass adoption of augmented reality, we're seeing a lot with, like, face filters and Snapchat and all those things. But for me, what I see, and that's one of the things that like I think is generating a lot more traction now, is I literally have taken sort of examples from, I guess Masters of the Sun is like the perfect example of like how you use AR because it creates a wonderful experience where you don't even need to know how to read to pick up a book and experience the story, and it incorporates all these different things to where you're reading a book, but it feels like you're watching TV,
Mm.
and just that the opportunities to have that in schools and to explore comic books in a new way that people can take seriously um, with technology. Um, it's just not being explored, and it's not that like people were it's not that people were I guess it's not that it's like they're unaware of it. It's just they don't know how to sort of channel it and utilize it.
You say
And
you think it's a friction problem? Like, oh, I got to know to install an app. I got to install an app. I got to know to point it at the.
no,
No,
mm,
no.
no. So that's what like the burden of installing an app is. I think something that enthusiasts, like tech enthusiasts, sort of ponder around. For the most part, people are installing like games are a perfect example. People are installing those hyper casual games left and right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Games are not struggling for app
So
downloads right
people
now.
just aren't compelled to do it.
I think people aren't compelled to do it, and people aren't seeing sort of developers aren't seeing the power of an app
Mm-hmm.
when you have an actual product.
Right.
And so, like, I think somebody in I'm on the YouTube channel as well, but somebody talked about like what's your dream project. My dream project is to make an augmented reality book with E40, and and it's that for that reason is because one of the things that I've noticed with one of the things that I've noticed when people experience my stuff is they say, "Oh, this is perfect for my kid," because it has an audio component to it. Like it's
Oh yeah,
literally an
yeah.
audiobook.
Yep.
It's literally a cartoon. But it's a book, And so in terms of, you give them headphones, you give them an iPad, you give them the book, and they're immersed in it. They're immersed in it and they can control it too. And so it's one of those things where, if I could create sort of a modern day uh, a modern day Dr. Seuss experience with the Dr. Seuss's of our times, especially E40, and create a book series out of that people buy the book, people download the app, and then they experience it from the mouth of E40, as a storyteller. It sort of it reframes what story time means,
Right.
because it's not just a kid just I mean, especially like nowadays, with the coronavirus and essential workers and all those different things. It creates this immersive experience that people really just get sucked into, and it's something that is so real because you're not removing yourself from the world like VR is, but it's really enhancing it for what it actually is. And so, like I'm part of a lot of different conversations about, how to use like AR in medicine and training and all that. But for entertainment, it's really all about like, how do you have that immersive experience without removing yourself from reality?
And
Right.
just E40 is like like the one of the legendary lyricists out of the Bay Area, and
Oh yeah.
if you ever if it is what's the Netflix series Hip Hop Evolution,
Yeah, Hip Hop
and they
Evolution.
do a really good focus on him when they do the Bay Area side of things, and just like I could totally see it. And yeah, I really love how you've pointed out. So like, yeah, I think you're right. Like a lot of the people in the industry, we do have a lot of hangups in our industry. One is we wished everybody agreed on the same acronyms, and we think people just don't want to install apps, and what we're really looking for is how do we get people to see what we see? Like how do we get people to see the potential we see? So I really like that you've pointed out like you don't think that's a problem. And I also like that, you know, a lot of people think, well, yeah, of course, augmented reality in comic books, because comic books are images that you can track, and that's like a core mechanic of augmented reality. But I like how you've pointed out, like, well, but it's actually a way of bringing motion and sound to comic books and to like to like physical printed materials, in a way that, like, how else would you do it? You know, I mean, like, I was trying to remember, like, when I was a little kid, I think there was these little kids books. This is how old I am. That had little records embossed on the page.
Oh yeah.
And it came with a little record player that, like, you set it on the page. And it was like, so we've been playing with this for decades, right? Like, in this idea of, like, how do we make things a physical thing we covet, or that really captures our imagination? How do we take someone deeper with it? How do we give them another layer of experience on it? So I really love that you've pointed out the experience part of it. We do get caught up in the mechanics of it, and how do we make I think another part of it is, unfortunately, we're always trying to figure out, how does this turn into a $1 billion business? How does this turn into a thing that, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be that, I mean, if people are motivated, like, that's why I was thinking about, like, that's why I used the phrase, like, compelled to do these things. Like, if things are cool, people will figure out how to get to it, right? They will install the app, they will do the thing, but you got to sell it too. And that, we pointed out earlier, not everyone is either good at marketing, or the marketing people that are good don't necessarily get this stuff yet, so they're not very good at promoting it. So it sounds like that might be another problem.
Can I offer a counterpoint to and this is just a thought in my head, is that, how when there's a book and everyone loves the book, and then they make a movie, and then there's invariably people who are like, oh, that's not what it was in my head when I was, like, reading the book. That's not what Harry Potter looked like. That's not what Hermione sounded like. There's all of this this wealth of media that we make up in our heads when we read things, and I feel the same kind of way about like, I've got the whole Inkle series from Mobius, and like, I can hear the sounds of the city. I can hear the big garbage pile, like, all of the things that are happening in there. I've made up my own media myself, and so I know what you're doing is you're using new media with so they get the whole thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like with comic books specifically, like, people, in order to show someone's going fast, you have art that shows them going fast. Things are blurred, and there's wind lines and stuff like that. Are you making it more complex than it needs to be by adding audio and motion and stuff like that, or are you increasing its value by doing those things? And the next part of that is, what happens when you have the book and the app is no longer being updated for iOS 27 or whatever, right? Like, because I've still got that freaking Inkle book, and that was from the 70s or 80s,
Yeah, I think it's one of the unintentional consequences of it. It's a blessing and a curse, right? So for me, I'm trying to find ways to get more Black people into tech, and I stumbled upon making apps through augmented reality and making my own app. I'm not a full stack developer, but I know how to make apps with very, very minimal code, and I know how to make things that are interactive because I build them on a game engine, because that's pretty much Unity is a game engine, and a lot of people, I mean, the majority of the apps that are built on Unity. And so I think I'm fortunate enough to be in the space and be at a time where that barrier of entry to be in tech is much lower. The problem that I have, the problem isn't whether I can make an app. It's more of, can I update the app when Apple changes their stuff now?
Yeah.
That's right.
Which is which, you know, at the end of the day, when we're talking about projects, so say for books, you know, if you have a book project and you trying to measure sort of the success of it, most of the time you only have just book sales. But now now especially for web comics, because web comics are picking up really big, you're really beholden to sort of like, you know, your web hosting, or if you're a webtoon. But if you have an app and it's an AR app and you make posters that are augmented reality posters that go with your webcomic, now you have app downloads. And that opens up you know, in terms of numbers and showing the value of it to even get funding.
Right.
That you walk in with 100, you know, 1,000 downloads of your AR app that only has 2 image targets on it, you know, and people only use that because they love your work. You have thousands of followers and they bought your prints and they love to see that experience. You know, I think it's easy to sort of like get lost in sort of the tech, but really it's like you're using AR not as an end goal, but as a way to enhance your work. And so
Right.
when you
So then, do
approach it
you
from
see
there,
your projects? Do you see them as ephemeral, as like as fleeting, because of this this OS and app
Or
kind
just
of
the
upgrade
maintenance, the
thing?
overhead of maintaining.
Yeah, I mean, like, is this a thing that happened in the years between 2019 and 2022? Like, there was this incredible stuff that, oh, well, you weren't there and you didn't get to see it, so but everyone can talk about it and see how cool it was.
well, I
You know?
think as a creator, I've updated my app twice in the past 3. So I launched it in January, and then I did a update. I did a update in March or
Right.
April, one of those days, or one of those. So like March or April. And the reason I updated is because one, I made more pages, and so as a creator, I'm just making stuff. So I've been trying to find ways, and I'll go. We could go off to the. I could dive deeper into that later, but I've been trying to find ways to avoid updating the app,
Right.
and because you know the framework is done, and so all I'm doing is updating the content, uh, because you know I'm a
Right. Well, oh
creator.
shit. I mean, Paul and I are working on this exact problem right now with
Yeah,
one of our clients.
Yeah.
yeah, and so right now the only way to update an app with content for AR is you have to update it. You have to update the app on the App Store, and they have to download it through there. There's
You
ways
can't
to
use
use.
the Unity. What's it called? Addressables
Asset bundles or addressables. Yeah.
or
You can
asset.
use
Yeah.
asset bundles and addressables, but there's a problem that happens if you build something on Vuforia and possibly AR Foundation, where you, even though all the stuff is there, like I said, I went through the hassle of setting up Firebase, I went through the hassle of setting up, you know, addressables and everything, and I literally got everything onto the device, you know,
Right.
but I was not able to instantiate any of that stuff. And
So you
so,
had the binary. You were able
yes,
to download it
all of
from the
that.
web, put it onto the local device, and it still wouldn't go through AR
Yeah,
Foundation.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Well, yeah,
we'll be digging. We're running an app on top of AR Foundation that I will gladly share my notes. So I've started digging
yeah.
into it this week, but Vuforia might be a different beast. I know we did talk about the image tracking. You know, the finally Vuforia came around to not requiring you to process the image targets on the cloud side,
Yep. I've
which is
used that.
which is
I've used
awesome.
that like crazy.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's funny. You know, I think you were a little too humble about like you said you're not a full stack developer, but like you know when you get into Firebase and you start setting up like the server side, like just so I know, you're saying that this was Adobe Max last year that was when you met the paper person that told you
Yeah.
here's the things you could look into for AR. So like
Yeah.
I mean you're
And
really
you've gotten to the place where you are
yeah
now
you're
1 year.
yeah you're
No, not even a year.
yeah that's what I was gonna
developed my
say.
first app. I developed my first app. I learned. So I bought the course December 11th. The AR course December 11th, and then I ended up launching the first version of Island Fever the first or second week of January, and then I launched the current update the timeline and like 3D models and all the animation. I want to say in March. Yeah, it was in March because this is when all the coronavirus stuff started, and I was really preparing to do Emerald City Comic Con and then WonderCon, but then all those got
Hmm.
canceled, and I was like, dang, I've been working on this, and so yeah, I've been all this stuff that I'm doing right now. I've only been well, all the AR stuff because I've been an animator for the past 7 years, and so all the AR stuff and using Unity, I've only yeah, I think I'm going on like a little over 6 months, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
probably
mean,
6 months.
I think you're being too humble. But what I would, so we do have a couple of questions. One that I wanted to, just because this is so fresh, this journey is so fresh. Like you knew about augmented reality, you got an inkling about it, not that long ago, and you've really dove in deep. Like, we do have people in our community that are like, how do I even get started? Like, so since you've kind of just come out of this journey, like, when Spencer and I started this stuff, there was no Udemy. There was no, it was like,
Yeah.
so like, was that good? Would you recommend that again? How would what would be your little bullet point list of like someone that is creative, technically not afraid to like dive into tutorials and teach themselves things? How do you tell them to get started?
So I would say first follow me because I am well that's so what I found is that I Udemy was great and YouTube is great, but what I found, and this is sort of something that like sort of to give me unsettle me a little bit, is that I just found out about AR and sort of like the applications of it and that people were creating in it. But most of the stuff that I was finding were, tutorials from 2016, tutorials from 2015. I think the tutorial that I had, that was they were using Unity 8 2018 or 2017, and so there are so many things that have changed, and the I guess the contemporary resources just really aren't there as much as I would like them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I'm doing is not talking about necessarily the the philosophy of AR, but really the utilization of AR. And I'm using that from the perspective, for me, I had a specific reason why I was trying to use AR. And it's because I'm tired of, sending people links to my animation
Yeah.
when I'm selling books at a convention and nobody has internet access, And
Right.
so it's like, how do I sort of increase the accessibility of the work that I do and make it a little more tangible,
Yeah.
because we're all tactile. We live on, we like interact with screens, but we don't want to live on screens, and we get a very visceral experience from something that's physical. And I think that's something that like I've taken from sort of the comic book industry, and how you talk to any comic book head, and they will say, I have some digital comics just because I torrented them, or
Yeah.
I didn't want to pay for them.
Right.
But if I have the opportunity to get a hardcover, I'm getting a hardcover because
Right.
that feeling of opening up a page, opening up a
And the
book,
smell of the
yeah,
paper. And yeah.
just seeing a full, a double page spread, and just seeing the details in the art. You just can't replace that. And so I've
Okay, so
always,
here's I got another question for you. Let's talk about that hardcover, detailed thing. I've got that, like here. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, look at that. The pen strokes and the color, and it's just, I'm looking at it closely. If I take my phone, I have to put it down on the table and back away from it so that I can get a good image track. And then
yeah.
I'm looking at it back here, and then I go back there, and I go, like, is that did you think about that in the design, like
Yes,
having to kind
yes.
of like back away and
So I use AR in my books for specific reasons. For one of the reasons is to try to get kids that can't read or are not strong readers to open up a book and sort of just follow along with the stories
Just get
and
comfortable with
and
having a
yeah,
book. Yeah.
yeah, get comfortable with having a book. And so
nice.
that's been one of the things, is just adding audio to it, adding sound effects to it, adding motion
Right.
graphics to it. Not full on animation, just little animations of just like the speech bubbles popping
Mm-hmm.
out and coming towards you. Like that stuff does so much, even though it doesn't require a lot of effort. Obviously, you need to know how to use the timeline, but other than that, like it doesn't require a lot of like like a lot of creativity to figure that out. It's sort of like the path of least resistance with it. But it really just focuses on really what is the experience that is going to enhance the what is the approach that can enhance the experience that they're going to have.
Right.
At the end of the day, I want them to read a book. I just want there to be more bells and whistles so that they're not competing with static images versus a TV screen.
Right.
How do I sort of marry the two of those? And by marrying the two of
Well, and
those,
it's cooler than a TV screen too.
yeah, it's cooler than it
Yeah.
because you could touch it, you could rotate it. And so one of like the ideal cases for me is because things are built on a game engine. I was like, okay, if there's a character, if there's a part of the story where a character is playing a book or playing a game, and it's like a hyper casual game or whatever, what if I actually just incorporated the game into the book? And so the only way you could access the game is when you get to that page and you're playing it as if you were the character. And so it's just like being able to just the freedom to even think about stuff like that.
Have you done that yet?
Yeah. One of the characters is, and I think it shows it in the demo, but I definitely updated it more. But you'll see that actually I don't think I have like the demo of it. I think it's just been on Twitter or something. But I have where I'm using a ground plane and the main character has a teddy bear named Nimbus. And so I have the Nimbus. He's just like a bear in a bunny suit, and you're able to walk around with them. So like he actually has a character controller on him, and he has punching, he has kicking. He could do some like capoeira. He could do some flips. He could.
I love this little. I'm gonna show this bear again because I love this little bear.
Yeah, it's and so like stuff like that is really sort of the power of AR because all you're doing is taking like the best parts about like a game and being able to control stuff, and you're adding that to books and you're contextualizing that because you're using the same characters and you're contextualizing that because you're using just you're thinking outside the box, but you're creating stuff from blank paper, so like you're kind of in that space already.
It's cool. It's very much like having a Spider-Man comic book, and then getting a Spider-Man action figure.
Yeah.
As a little kid and like acting it out. You're kind of allowing them to do that in a more video game kind of way. That's
yeah. Like literally all Marvel has to do is just take all their 3D models of all their characters. Have an exclusive AR cover that goes with their book, and say you have a Wolverine book, you have a 3D model of Wolverine, you put that on the cover, and then you add a character controller to it, and so now they could act like they're Wolverine, and they could do jumps, and they could do some stuff that you see in the video games, and that's a $1 million idea right there.
Okay, it is.
I was gonna
you can.
hold. While we have this up, because I want to plug Steven as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned the hardcover, so one thing, I don't remember if we talked about it on the live show. We talked about it in the pre-show. Steven makes everything you see here. He's literally making it by hand. He's hand binding these books. So like when you order these books,
While teaching himself AR.
Let's not forget we just talked about how he taught himself how to do the development side. Like he's hand putting these books together, and then the most recent thing was the puzzle, right? Like I saw a video on Twitter where you like showed, here's how I have designed this puzzle. I'm literally printing it out in my home and pressing it on. and building the digital content around it. So like, to me, I just didn't want to we're so technical and the show's always so technical, but like, we really love craftspeople. And like, I just really wanted to point out like the love and care that's going into all this stuff that you're building. Like you're literally building it.
Is there a link that we can put up front and center that shows how people can purchase this book so that?
Oh yeah. Just go to iltopia.com/shop.
Yep. ILTOPO or TOPIA. It's
Yeah,
right
so
there.
think utopia, but instead of the U, it's an I and an L.
So it's
And-
ill and
yeah.
not you.
Oh yeah, it's ill.
So and like yeah, so sorry, I didn't want to get off of that while we were talking about the physical book. It's like, to me, there's something really cool about this idea of here is one person, he's talking, we're hearing his voice, we're hearing his journey, and you're ordering a physical thing that he literally made with his hands, and then there's a digital layer on top of it. He also built that with his hands. Like, that's very rare, and it's just it's worth pointing out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that one, it sort of drives my girlfriend crazy. Well, it drives her crazy because I now have a corner. I have a studio corner. I have a studio corner for sort of like my book making, my puzzle making, my print making, all those things. I think I make a whole bunch of stickers, so now I'm like starting to make AR stickers just cause I can, but it's one of those things that with the whole coronavirus thing that finished, or that is going on right now. I was fortunate enough to be in Portland, and Portland has a lot of great resources, with like the Rockwood Library, and having like thousands of dollars worth of 3D printers, and then the IPRC, the Independent Publishing Resource Center, that has tons of stuff there. Um, the problem has been that once all that stuff was inaccessible, it really put me at a standstill, and I really had to figure out ways to still be creative, still create things, but not be beholden to a entity that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was tough at first. I think when the things that I was doing before, things were starting to pick up there, and then all that stuff sort of just went away. And so it sort of made me sort of step back and say, okay, well, what do I have control over, and what can I do with my bare hands and my approach and my drive that allows me to create something that I can scale, and that has impacts, that also is sort of ahead of the curve a little bit. And so with that, I make a whole bunch of things, and I'm pretty crafty as in and of itself. And so it was really me sort of saying, okay, what can I do with AR, knowing what I know now, and knowing what I know works, and how can I just level it up, just ever so slightly, with every project that I do, because for the most part, when I got into AR, I've been making books and stuff like that for a while, but it wasn't until I produced the first produced the first app and showed the very same comic, that I was working on, but I implemented AR into it, and then I got I got a visceral response from it.
Oh, interesting.
It was completely, it's for people, they're like, oh yeah, that's great art, but when you put a screen in front of it, and then people see what's on the screen, and they reckon with the fact that it's connected to the book, then it just changes the world that people experience. They're like, oh, this is voodoo magic, this is crazy. I can buy this and experience it myself. Wow. And so after I started doing that in conventions and stuff, when we had those, it really it dove me deeper into understanding more about augmented reality and more about the use cases of it, because I'm seeing exactly how people are utilizing it on the street. And
Well,
then
you bring an authenticity to it as well. So when you show someone at a convention, hey, take a look at this through your phone or through my phone, that is the beauty of you being hands-on with every layer, is you're not just some comic book artist that said, I don't know, my publisher did this augmented reality thing, you can look at it on your phone and just blow it off. You're like, no,
Right.
here's why I did this, and here's how I did it, and I'm the one that did that, and I literally published that app to the app store that you just downloaded.
I had to pay that $100.
Yeah, right? I wanted to bring Estella had an awesome question. Oh, go ahead. You want to go ahead?
Well, I wouldn't actually. Let's hear Stella's question, because I have a question about laying out the media in your books, and
Okay. Yeah.
but Stella first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Stella's asking, what would you want to see from the XR industry in terms of diversifying with more Black representation? That's something you said very early on. Like, it's not that you're necessarily only focused on augmented reality or XR, but you see it as a potential pathway to get more, more people of color, more underrepresented people in tech. So what would you want to see in the XR industry in particular in terms of diversifying?
So I have a very specific story. And this is a story post having the app. So people check out my work, and it's kind of crazy. Like, people were checking out my work and they're seeing it, and people were having a very specific response that I'm not used to. And at least along the journey that I'm having with the very same thing that I have. And so when I released the second version of the app, and I had the comic and everything was ready to sort of like put out there, I went through and I started contacting, people that I knew in sort of like the art tech industry, creative studios, all those things, and saying like, hey, I literally built this from the ground up. I wrote the story, I illustrated everything, I colored everything, I printed it out, I bound it, I built the app, I built all the animations, I got all the 3D models, I did all that stuff, put it on the App Store, I completely own it. And people would check it out, they'd be like, oh, that's really cool. I'll, forward it off to my friends and stuff. And then they would follow up and say, we see the stuff that you're doing and it's really good, and we wonder if this is, something you want to focus on, or do you want to actually get a job in the industry? And then they would follow up and say, for this, you just don't have a breadth of experience in the industry, and you don't have any internship experience, and you don't have as much of a portfolio as what we're looking for. And so we want to try you out. We want to try you out.
Yeah.
And we want to see how you do with projects. And so we could set up some opportunities for you to shadow, but we don't know how you will how you would respond in a working environment. And so this is a perfect example of the problems that Black creators have in the tech space, where I literally built an app with the audio component, with everything. I literally built this from the ground up, and I still can't get a job in the space because I don't fit sort of the model that they're looking for. And so for me, it becomes frustrating because, I've been, one of the reasons why I went back to school is because I've sort of beat my head against the wall trying to get onto an agency, apply, do all these things, build a portfolio. Like, literally the reason, like Island Fever, the reason it looks exactly how it is because I was told when I was in LA that I need to channel my focus into a specific project that is able to highlight all of my talents. And so this project highlights not only the creative stuff, but also the tech stuff. And then there's a specific reason why I created Island Fever and Iltopia to house all that stuff. And even when I got to a point where people are willing to pay money for it, it still won't get me. It still has not gotten me in the door or just got my foot in the door. It's gotten me conversations now, but It still hasn't gotten me in the door.
So why is that? Is that because of your art style, or is it because of just like, the ongoing freaking problem with racism in America? I mean, is it, what do you think? What's the reason for it?
I think that, and this is one of the things that I often find this is if we're talking about current events, Aunt Jemima is, sort of the thing that's trending right now because, people are, the company is going a different direction from Aunt Jemima. And many people, particularly white people, no offense, but particularly white people are upset that it's being taken away, and as an affront to sort of culture and stuff like that. And so I think it's sort of that subtlety of the people's knack to defend why it should still be there in the name of culture, even though like Aunt Jemima is a racist trope. It's
Yeah,
a palatable one. It's a
yeah.
palatable one. It's subtle, but it's still
Well,
racist. And so
they put pearls on her in the
yeah,
'60s, I think,
like
right?
they
Yeah.
like they did that. And so I think in society, like some of those things are sort of like fabrics and expectations that we expect. And so when I walk in, I'm an ex-football player. I mean, I'm like 6'1", like over 200 pounds. I walk in with the AR app that has a whole bunch of teddy bears and kids on it. And I literally come out of nowhere. I don't have any skin in the game, and I'm saying, hey, I'm trying to get hired for projects because I have skills. And and some people kind of get offended by it, and other people are sort of taken back by it because it's unexpected. And so I don't think that people, I don't know, to be honest, like I don't know. And if I had the answer, I would probably have a job right now. But
Well, so
you know,
so like so first of all, I want to say there there's no, in my opinion, there's no such thing as palatable racism. So I get what you meant by it, but it's still it's unacceptable. So like, just to be clear, the experience you had was you tried to engage a person or a company, and you said, here's my work, here's the things I've built, and they basically came back and said, well, this is cool, but we don't know if you're capable of working on a team, or we don't even know if you want a job, or we don't even know if you know what it's like to work in a production environment, was kind of the response you got. But like, what were you looking to get? Like, were you looking to collaborate? Were you looking for investment? Like, what would have been the ideal response? Like, how, what would be like, what were you shooting for when you submit your work, or when you connect with someone to show them your work? Like, what is that ideal outcome for you?
I just want an entry level job.
So you're just looking for a job, and they're
Like
saying,
literally an entry level job, like doing anything so I can get experience.
yeah.
Like that's literally uh
And
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 essentially the response you're getting back is, we don't know if you have enough experience.
yeah, or either that or I need to be more specific in my job search.
Yeah, and
And
actually, the chat made a comment about this.
Well, and
This is
actually, I gotta say
the
that
blight of a generalist. Like,
that is a problem with being a generalist, and I, like Paul and I both understand that. Paul
yeah,
can fall back on I'm a dev, but a lot of us like you have all of the little pieces, and you're interested in all of them. And someone's like, "What do you do?" Like, well,
yeah.
well,
It's
I mean,
I
like,
that's what
think
I just did.
there was a really
You know?
interesting conversation around about this in the game industry. I mean, well, so first we had Anastasia on, where we talked about game audio, and it's unfortunate that, like, and I will fully admit I've fallen into this bad pattern, which is like, somebody says, I want to get into games, and you're like, well, do you like writing code or making art? And
yeah.
you try to set a track for someone. And I think one thing that's really exciting about right now, we talked about it a little bit in the Discord, like Lens Studio and Spark AR, like, and even like the Adobe tools, and the lines are really blurring between, I'm a technical person and I'm a creative person. And
Oh
guess
yeah.
guess what? You can be both. And
Yeah. I
you can
mean,
actually be
Adobe
good. You can
XD,
actually be good at
that
both.
changed. Like it's like I
Right.
feel like Photoshop, and yeah, like Photoshop and Adobe XD, just like Illustrator, all those things are utilized in so many different industries and so many different areas that you just
Right.
understand the software and you know how to draw a straight line. You don't even have to know how to draw a straight line. You just need to
Right.
know how to click.
Right.
You just need to know how to click and use a ruler. But for me, it's always been this sort of balance of, okay, I'm creative and I know how to express that, and I have no problem doing that, but I need to pay bills.
Hmm.
And this time last year I was a personal trainer, and what I would do is what I would do since I've been up here is I would just cold email I'll cold email every 6 months or every 6 to 7 months, I'll cold email like probably like like 10 to 20 different creative studios, and I'll just like just show my portfolio or apply to jobs and stuff like that. I'll get a whole bunch of rejections, but like it's one of those things where,
Efficient.
Like
Right.
I'm showing that like I'm here. I'm showing that I'm
Yeah.
consistent. And ever so often I would just look back and I have just a Rolodex of, all the emails that I sent just in my outbox. And it wasn't until like last year that I finally got a little bit of headway. And then this year, and but it's still like the same sort of problem sort of pervased where, it's always, if it's not one thing, it's another. If it's not this, it's not that. But it's never because I don't have
Stephen,
the skills.
I'm gonna jump out on a limb here and say that if you were a young white dude and you built your own game, learned Unity in 6 months, printed and did everything on your own books, did all of this stuff yourself, and you came to any spot in Portland, there would be interest, and I
Yeah,
think that's really sad.
yeah,
And we're pretty progressive here. We're a
yeah.
pretty
It's
progressive town, but I just got like the breadth of experience and knowledge that you have right now, that you gained in a really short amount of time, and your eloquence and your ability to describe what you're doing, I mean, I'm stunned that no one has snapped you up yet. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
let's talk later.
It's I think and I think it's like because everything is sort of, I think the coronavirus sort of shaking up every industry has definitely
Yeah,
worked in my benefit,
right.
because sort of the barriers in my career as a creator, not even the medicine part, but like the barriers of like my career, um the barriers have sort of been dismantled in ways, because now there's opportunities for me to do exactly what I was trying to do. And that's just create and find ways to turn my creativity into something where I can pay my bills.
Okay,
And
so are you finding that since the recent protests and all of the stuff that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, have you been finding mainly white employers being more open to hiring you? Is that something that have you seen a change in that graph of people ignoring the emails?
no, so not that. It's more because I'm a teaching artist, and so there's always this, with all of the work that I do, it focuses on inspiring people to do something, empowering people to do something, and there's always this entertaining thing, because I feel like I have a pretty decent sense of humor, or at least I know how to talk to people, right? And so animate comics, like you have to have a sense of humor making comics. And so what I think is happening now is because I'm so used to doing things remotely, and I work in sort of the physical, work with physical products, and I work with digital content, and I found sort of this happy medium of the two, where I can come up with a video to teach you how to make a puzzle, or teach you how to make a comic, or teach you how to do things, that skill in and of itself has allowed me to work with companies to convert them to a more remote workflow,
Yeah.
or just in sort of like the children's book area, where people were trying to find activities that involve tech and involve the creativity to just kill their time. Like like those spaces are the things that are opening up doors for me. So the things that were hobbies
Hmm.
for me, not the things for work, like all that stuff is
Yes.
sort of like the things that are
Yes.
hobbies for me, that I wasn't
Nice.
making money on. Those are the things that are picking up, and essentially like hobbies in terms of like the stuff that I'll do conventions with, like that's the stuff that I'm dealing with now. So
Yep.
like now I'm spending more time making books and spending more time sending off book orders for like comic books and activity books and stuff that I'm doing. And I was like joking around about this. When all this stuff started to like phase out, I have a partner YouTube channel because I made this series when I my first YouTube animation video was this video called Pokemon Twerk Team. And so if anybody sees any of like the Pokemon twerking memes with like Ash Ketchum twerking and stuff like that, I made those. I made those, like those are my first like YouTube videos that I made. And so what I did is I said, okay, I have a partner YouTube channel, and I need to find ways to sort of like level it up. And so what I did is I essentially said I'm going to be like the black AR enthusiast that like is up to date on all these things. So I'm gonna convert my YouTube channel. I'm going to make YouTube videos. I'm going to make podcasts about like creator focused stuff. And that was really what I was trying to do. Like in this whole AR space, like my goal is to be like a AR YouTuber, and I started to, sort of think of how do I create sort of courses that are for 2020, not 2016, and sort of fill that gap. And,
I never thought of Pikachu as having a little cat butt action, but I see it.
Yeah.
I see it.
It's funny because that's only one frame.
I see it. I see it.
And that's all that people. That's what resonates with people.
It's so good.
Like I really like that. That's like that was where like my head was at. And so for people that are watching this, my next like AR project is actually turning that into an AR comic.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so using the timeline, using actual animation files, because it just takes time to like animate all that stuff. And so I started that in like 2012, 2013, and I periodically like update the series a little bit more. And so I have like tons of animation that just lives on YouTube. And so I'm actually going to just put that in a book and have it so where, you just download the Pokemon Twerk Team app. Fun fact, I actually own the domain name to Pokemon Twerk Team. And so that was just
I would expect nothing less at this point.
Yeah.
I was Oren mentioned, so someone in chat mentioned you do live stream already, right? Like what do you live stream? What are you on? Like let's get you out there.
I use Restream.io, and so I stream on Mixer, Periscope, Facebook, Twitch. All those are at Iltopia, so ILTOPIA. I think my own, like Stuck on an Island, that's just like my personal stuff. So I just, do a whole bunch of, I interact with people through Stuck on an Island, but I create and do all my creative stuff through Iltopia. And so I think when the past couple of months, I've been live streaming myself learning Blender. And so I was just shy of 100 hours last month. I want to say I was just shy of 100 hours last month. But really, like a lot of projects that I'm not under NDAs for, whether it's animating more Pokemon Twerk Team stuff, or working and developing on for Island Fever, or what was it? Yeah, like last month I was trying to figure out Cinemachine with Unity and how to use it for compositing, because I did like a little animated dance sequence with one of my characters, and I did that in Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate, and then I set up like the template in Premiere, and then I did all the backgrounds and all the 3D animation in Unity, and then I used Cinemachine to actually like capture all that, and I imported that and did all the compositing in After Effects. And so I pretty much documented that whole thing on live stream. And, whenever people were just like chilling or whatever, would just find me on there just working on stuff. And so
I haven't been able to figure out Cinema Machine yet. I will go and check that out.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I as somebody that like is very, very cautious of going into like Blender and Maya and all those, it's real-time rendering. I mean, like that's just what it comes down to. Like it's real-time rendering, and with Unity, I really appreciate that the control of the camera is very easy.
Hmm.
We set up the scene and you can just move the camera, however you
Right.
want to do and stuff. And
That's
so,
somebody mentioned something earlier in the chat, early when we were talking about like app installs. They mentioned WebXR, and like I didn't even bring it up because I just know that there's really like the reason that you've been pretty consistent about that you like about Unity is like the editor and the UI and like your ability to mentally figure out how to animate with this user interface. As far as I know, there's only one decent WebXR and web-based 3D tool, and it's Play Canvas, and they have a really
yeah,
nice editor. But to pub like it's still not quite there. It's very good, but it's not quite
yeah,
there as far as what Unity has on the deeper stuff like animation and things like that.
yeah. I think one of the things that for me, I don't see myself using WebXR because web development is not there yet.
Hmm.
We're not at the point where we can have a gigabyte worth of assets readily accessible for a website to pull or for an app to pull from on a website. And so for me, there's only so much compression I could do to an image before it
Yeah.
loses its quality. There's only so much I could do to a 3D model before it's not a 3D model anymore. And so the utility of WebXR is amazing for cross-platform, development. You have an experience on a website, and you could use that as like a great marketing tool for certain things. So say you have a specific WebXR like link for a specific image, just one image. You could do that, and you could replicate that, and hopefully, if you have like 100 images, you're not going to bog down your server. But for me, I make books, so like my books, on average, my books are about 100 to 120 pages.
Yeah.
And so it's just if I'm having problems trying to figure out how to keep the files down for a native app,
Yeah.
dealing with the web and dealing with all those extra things, it's just not feasible for me. And so that's
Yeah.
where I sort of talk about with like the AR enthusiast versus somebody that is actual creator and creating stuff in that space.
Yep.
Because all I hear is WebXR, but they haven't even tapped into like what native
Yeah.
AR is.
Yep.
And so for me, it's all about accessibility.
Well, I also think that your specific use of AR with your books
Yeah.
is definitely not a match for web AR.
Yeah,
But
no.
web AR can be used for for other things. Like I'm kind of bullish on web AR, but definitely not for the amount of data that you're trying to
It's
put
still
out.
very even to do a simple experience is a little too tedious. Yeah. And David, hey David, David mentioned in the chat like Babylon J. I love Babylon. I like we I need to update it, but our little XR Talk website is running on top of Babylon, but their editor is not good. It's just like that's so. I used to say that like when Spencer and I were in the games industry, like working at professional studios, when every studio or every game company had their own engine before there were licensable engines, every large game company had a what they called a tools and tech team who was usually responsible for the engine, but they also built the editor. If it was a well funded enough studio,
Yeah.
you'd have an editor, and it was always janky and hokey because it's an editor for maybe a few hundred customers at the most. Like even EA, you only have like so many people using this tool internally, and so just it never got the love. And so what really got Unity its like first foothold was it was a pretty reasonable editor environment. And honestly, I've been using Unity since version 1.5.
Oh wow.
The
Okay.
general Unity editor environment has been the same the entire time.
Yeah.
And so then they got their real boost when they really embraced mobile early. We really need like Play Canvas, like I said, for web 3D stuff. Play Canvas has the best editor I've seen so far.
Okay.
Unity, and then the flip side of that is Unity's WebGL support is just not good. Like
I published one thing on there, and it was just like,
it
I
doesn't
don't
work
know.
on mobile. It's like very limited. Like, so we aren't quite there in both directions, but like I
Yeah.
think people are. It's still very, you know, trying.
Like all this stuff is new.
Yeah,
Like all
and it's
this
all
stuff is
hokey.
changing.
It's
You know,
janky. You know?
like it's
And
like
what's
mind you, like
cool is that you can modify it, you can play
yeah,
with it, you
you
can
know,
use
like
it for things it wasn't meant for, and
yeah,
so
like
yeah.
if you're using stock Unity without any assets and any sort of extensions or plugins, like like what are you doing? You know, it's a like I think the
Yeah,
I
it's
think
become a
the
platform. It's definitely a platform now, right?
and I think I appreciate it as a creator because like even with Photoshop, with Photoshop you have your own brushes, with Photoshop you have your own color palettes, all of that, on canvas. Like that it's a creator's dream. And for me as a creator working in AR and working in animation and working in 3D and working in 2D and adding game elements to it, like it's a sandbox for me. But for me, I work in a specific area because that's where my focus is. And I think the beauty of it is that I can focus on it with that. Whereas, my girlfriend, she's trying to develop games. She's using Unity for a completely different thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
still under the umbrella, but it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a, it's, I think that, and mind you, like I say that I love, like Unity is great, but I know that with my projects, if I don't save it before I click play, that thing is going to crash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm going to have to deal with that. So it's not perfect by any means. Like
Right.
I know that if I'm working on a project and I have shown it on like a bunch of my live streams, but I'll be working on a project for like 2 hours, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm ready. It's ready to like let me test it out real quick. I know that I'm going to have to save it. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to say the save and the save project, and then I'll click play. And if it doesn't like start working, if my webcam doesn't pick up if the webcam light doesn't turn on in like 5 seconds, then I know it's going to crash. And then I'm going to get that like scrolling bar. And then I'm going to have to like click X. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to report this. And I'm going to have to open up that same project and start back where I was at when I left off.
Right.
And then I can click play.
Well, I mean,
And
that's
so like,
And hopefully you have all of that on your live stream while you're
yeah, it's like it happens so often that that's a new normal for me. But and I understand that it's because I'm using Unity in a way that is somewhat non-traditional. Where it's I'm using the full power of its animation. I'm using all the capabilities of Vufourian animation. I'm in AR. And I'm using, I have like a UI, I have 3D models, I have custom 3D models
Right.
that are probably not low poly enough. I have character controllers, I have Firebase hooked up to it, I have Facebook hooked up to it. Like I have like all these different things connected to it that it really, it really tests the power of the platform. But just having the flexibility and freedom to do that when I really only started off as a webcomic. I mean, like this is all just
right.
for a webcomic.
Right.
Okay, so I have a question about because you are using Unity to animate in, which still
Yeah.
blows my freaking mind. And so you rig and skin your
No, so I
characters
don't.
in something else, right?
Yeah. And then I just import them in as a FBX.
And you bring them in hero pose.
Yeah.
And then you just start animating. You're like, okay, so this animation is going to be walking. So then you're like in the animation timeline, moving
Yep.
curves
And playing with those
and
keyframes and all that. And yeah, you can do that. And then and
I guess
yeah.
if you get used to it, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like,
And
I mean,
if
what's
I
the difference
really
in like laying out your keyframes and curves in that versus Maya or Blender?
it's I think I'm trying to like learn Blender now and I love it, But
Well, there's no IK in that. I mean, you can't. There's no.
there's procedural animation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but you mean like
inverse kinematics.
you mean like
you
if I've
put
got if I
Yeah,
move
you
if
can.
I move the hand of a character, their elbow and shoulder come with it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Oh, because you rigged it up that way.
Yeah, yeah. If you rig it, then you're able to do all that stuff in Unity. And this is a new thing though, mind you. Like this
it
is
must
all
be.
this is all new.
Unity
So post
listens to
pre
IK.
2019, like pre 2019, you can't do it.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
And 2019 only came out in 2020. What do you know?
yeah, right. Yeah, but
Okay, well,
all these things, like mind you, all of these things like Cinemachine is new. Like animation tools are new. So like this is all new. So like mind you, like I'm learning like Unity animation as they're like just now coming out with it, and then I'm learning all the AR stuff with Unity as
so
they're
you've
like
got you've got IK targets on your characters, and you can move the feet and move the arms. With IK,
I could do
instead
that.
of having to do forward K where you're like moving the elbow and then moving the
That's I
okay.
I think I approach.
I'm still impressed.
Yeah.
I'm still impressed.
Yeah, it's a it's I think the combination of like the animation tools, and then even if I just want something crazy, I could just go up to Mixamo and just like grab it from there too. And so it's just having the flexibility to do that for a webcomic. Like all this for a web is it's something that I'm encouraged to explore more because one, we all have the time, and two, it only enhances the experience that the end user has. And so I think that for all the sort of the attention that's given to the technology and where it's trying to go and all that stuff, ultimately for me, I'm trying to find ways to pay bills, and I'm trying to find ways to pay bills with by having customers and selling books, and for me, I found that the path of least resistance with that is implementing technology so that it becomes more engaging, and so like my next project, since I have sort of the AR puzzle thing figured out, is I want to at least have a couple of shirts that are AR shirts, where you sell the shirts, and then I implement sort of like the AR image track into the app, and then I create this AR experience from that, and it sort of like tells the story within the world of like Iltopian stuff to just like make people sort of just like think outside the box with what AR is capable of. And this isn't new. This isn't new. It's. I think the approach is something that is just non-traditional.
At AWE in I think it's got 2015, 2016. There's a guy named Rafi, and he had a suit, a full business suit, and it was what's the old Atari game?
Pac-Man?
Pac-Man. There's a Pac-Man pattern on it, right?
Oh,
and
nice.
He would hand you a phone, and you could point the phone at the back of his jacket and play Pac-Man.
Oh,
on
yeah.
his jacket.
Yep.
Same kind of concept, right?
Yeah.
Where you're bringing the tag. Now, but does Vuforia handle that deformation? Like it has to be really flat, doesn't it?
It has to. No,
I don't think it has to be super flat. And they're getting pretty. It's pretty tolerant. All that stuff's pretty tolerant. I mean, we were talking about string. I mean, Spencer, you remember we did. We were doing it with 3D objects before there was 3D tracking. True. We actually just took a picture of a neutral lit 3D object, and you could sort of do 3D object. They're just looking for feature points, right? They're really looking for those real high contrast things. So I would say if you're doing a t-shirt, I wouldn't necessarily track if it's a big full image that goes to the ribs and high and low. that you'd only want to track like the center where it's relatively flat, but it doesn't have to be perfectly
Right. So like
flat.
it's a character with a t-shirt, and the t-shirt is the tracking spot.
Yeah, what I would do is I would
Right.
actually create the animated asset or create the background and key it out. And
Yeah.
so you have the image target, and then you have you have sort of like the panel that you would build it on, and then you would key it out so that it doesn't show the background of it. So even though you have like the character that you're controlling, it just has a transparent background. And so,
Right.
people won't, like, on a screen, people won't notice it unless you're like going to a specific angle that really exploits it.
Well, and,
But
and that's always been our game as developers is
it's shortcuts.
you do shortcuts. It's like
Yeah.
those buildings over there in the driving game are just flat polygons.
Yeah.
They're not actually buildings.
Yeah.
So
It's
I wanted to so we're getting a little long on time, but but because we talked about I hope people really grasp the depth of your capabilities and talent, and I think a lot of people did. I also think a lot of people in our community can relate to being unfortunately, generalist has a stigma of like, oh, I can do a lot of things, but I'm not particularly good at any one thing, and I think that's really unfair. And what I would say to you is when you do run into these companies that like don't know what to do with you, because I think we've all faced this, like that they, oops, I just killed Spencer.
you just boot him out.
I was trying to mute him and I killed him from the call. What I was going to say is like, if someone doesn't know what to do with you, that's kind of a red flag for, I know you, I totally get the struggle of I'm looking for steady income. I want to be paid to do this work, but I think you have the capability and the personality. Really, you're on the track to be entrepreneurial and like have a bunch of different things going on. And I know that's so hard when you're just looking for like that like something steady that you can work on top of. But I think a lot of people, I just encourage people to try to find a way to build their thing. Sorry, Spencer.
That is the first time that Paul has ever kicked me out of
Well, I've had to mute you twice this show because you're little ants in the pants today. But
I'm a little ants in the pants.
but anyway, so I just want to like for everyone, not just but you in particular, Stephen, like you have the
It's my part.
you have the
I emptied that out.
you have the capability to communicate and articulate and storytell. So like I have a more difficult time with people that are quote unquote generalists that are also aren't willing to like tell stories and communicate. But you are so obviously that person that wants to share and wants to help other people, and you just don't have an ego. Like you're almost too humble, and I've been told this before in my past too. So like I totally get it. So like I just want everyone like that is in the same position. Like I know that it's a struggle and you just want to be creative and make a living from it. And you still have to keep trying to find, like, it may be you do engage a company and they do recognize, oh my gosh, this guy can do so much stuff. Yes, we will pay him to do a job, but he's going to do a bunch of stuff. That's the dream. But
Yeah.
like, just until that happens, keep doing what you're doing. We're going to support you. I already saw in the chat that people are going to try. We're going to help you. We're going to we're going to get your word out. And like, it's so good that you're out there and you're just sharing as much as you can. Like, you're so impressive. And like, I'm super happy that you were a guest on this show. Like, I think you're inspirational for a lot of people, and we're going to help you find, like, we're going to get you some stability. We're going to get you some opportunities, and like, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't get discouraged. And like people are listening, people are watching, people are appreciating you. And you, like, when you hit that level of you have talent and like a willingness to help others, like it will come back to you for the rest of your life. So like, I know it can be frustrating, and I know in particular, like you try to reach out to these companies and like, look, you're this big company that like should probably, like, unfortunately, like we live in this world. We actually talked about this in the pre-show, right? There are these big companies that they need to know what hole you fill, like what shape puzzle piece are you? And they really don't know how to deal with people that are like, well, I can fill that hole and that I'm all these shapes and I can do all these things. And then they go, well, wait a minute. No one person can be good at all these. And it's just, we've got to keep grinding it out and show. And like, fortunately we are in this age of digital. We're all kind of like, you can live stream. You will generate a following and a supportive group that will help you. And so I just want you to know, like, just keep grinding, keep creating, keep sharing. Like you're going to be just fine. I know, but like, I get it. Like there are some days even to this day where I'm like, I don't know what's happening next month, but as long as you're just a good person and like which you obviously are, you're going to be supported. So I just want everyone to be like, I would just want to, you're a perfect reason to share that message out to people. Like, you're a perfect example of, don't devalue your talent and your worth just because someone can't see how you fit into their career or their company. Don't let that affect you. Just be like, blow it off. Like they don't get it. They just don't get me. I will find someone that will get me, and we get you.
Yeah. I would say, this comes, my mindset is obviously very non-traditional because this is technically my second career. I didn't get drafted after playing football for 12 years. And so I approached this with the stubbornness of somebody that has had 2 hip surgeries and said, and told the doctors that I'm going to keep playing because I have 2 more years of eligibility left. And so it's I think that sort of like that drive and that unhealthy work ethic definitely shows, being that I learned all this stuff in the past 6 months. And but it's just really, I think for me now it's, after like, beating my head against a whole bunch of different avenues and seeing that there are opportunities out there in certain areas, it's, I just feel very fortunate. I definitely feel very fortunate to, get connected with you guys and being a part of the Discord and all that stuff. Cause, it's something that I've like sort of longed for, and I've like searched for actively and haven't necessarily found that community. And I always like joke around about, when I left like development, when Windows Mobile went down, I told myself I will never go back to like development ever again. And where I find community and where I see the opportunities are literally doing the things that I like tried to avoid. Yeah. And so it's definitely one of those like never say never, sort of situations. And it's, I think for me it's just it's interesting to see like all this stuff sort of, like you have an idea and you have an opportunity to sort of like see that idea through and manifest that from just something that was just in your head, and then seeing how people respond to it. It's a humbling experience, but it also sort of validates like, the efforts that you put in. And quite often, I think particularly for Black creators, like we create a lot of interesting things, but if it's not dancing or if it's not music or anything like that, then it's less likely to see the limelight that it deserves. And so, for me, like in the tech space, seeing how responsive people are to sort of, my expression, it's, I feel, I appreciate it. And I appreciate sort of like how it resonates with people beyond just like, looking at sort of the stereotypes. Mm-hmm. And so,
Stephen, you said something about an unhealthy work ethic. And I want to like just say that, your work ethic is only unhealthy if it makes you sad, if it makes you feel bad.
That's a good way to think about it.
Because it's not, being excited about something and being totally into it is not an unhealthy work ethic.
Mhm.
You know, so
Yeah,
just
no,
wanted to
I
that's
should
throw that
like
out.
if my girlfriend is watching this, she, I'm gonna tell her the same thing.
well. I
So
mean,
I'm
it's. I
saying,
mean, yeah. This has been a recurring theme, like working, like having now managed teams and people, and like you don't want you. I am very sensitive to like making people feel like they need to put in any more time than is normal for a job, but
yeah,
if someone's working the weekend or the evening or into the, like putting in a ton of hours, all you have to do is ask them, are you working on this because you feel like we expect you to work on this? Or are you just really excited about it? Because I can totally relate to that. Like when you get up in the morning and in the shower, you're like, I wish the shower would hurry up and finish so I can get to work on this thing. Or like, like that is healthy. Like it fills your soul. If you're like, I've got to put in these hours because like I got to keep like, if it's like taking away from your soul, that's the unhealthy version. So like I totally agree with Spencer. And the other part of it is too, you're not going to feel that way every day. And like kind of again back to, I totally understand your like you're trying to like do all these things and like see what sticks and what hits and what resonates with people and what's something that can like give you some financial stability and all those things, especially when we're locked at home so much right now, which I hope a lot of you are at home right now.
right.
You feel like, oh, I've got all this time at home where I didn't used to. And I used to think, oh, if I could only just be at home all the time, I could get all this stuff. It's a weird world, and creativity and like if you force problem solving, I can't tell you how many times I've like been like, I'm going to sit down and solve this problem and like been and done really dumb things to try to accomplish that versus I'll get back to it. It's a problem I do want to solve, but I'm going to let it come to me. So don't put pressure on yourself every day to be grinding. Like, I mean, it's one thing if you've got more book orders than you expected and but that should energize you because you're like, oh my gosh, like way more people were into this than I anticipated. But like when you do just recognize those opportunities to like take a break that like
And also remember that it's nice to have a girlfriend.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's yeah. And my girlfriend's an essential worker, and so she leaves, and then she comes back, and then she's like, "Oh, Steve, you're still working, but it's my passion."
Yeah, it's not work. It's not work. That's what you tell. I'm not really working. I'm doing what I want to do. Like I think that's something man, maybe XR talk turns into like creative techie talk, but like it is hard for people. I'm kind of, my wife is very supportive of everything I do, but like I do think we've all ran into that where your partner in your life doesn't understand that, yeah, I've been sitting at this desk for a really long time, but I'm loving it. I'm doing what I love. Like I'm doing it. Like I'm not forcing myself to sit here. I'm not sacrificing anything to be, this is what I want to do. This is what
Honey, bring me another diaper.
Yeah.
Well, if I had that, I wouldn't be disappearing during the middle of the show. But yeah, I mean, thanks so much for your time. Like I said, I want to, so I changed your tag here, but you are stuck on an island. You're in our Discord, which is chat.xrtalk.net. If you guys like this, if you like and subscribe, you know about all of our shows all the time. At Iltopia, Steven's live streaming. I encourage you, if you have the funds to do so, order a book or two. You're currently working on fulfilling an order of books, right? What was the book that just went out?
So I just got an order for 45. So I did inventory. So if anybody's been like following me on Instagram or stuff, I've been like documenting how I make books because I like to because people don't see people making books very often. It's just not a thing that like people see, and so I start to document all that stuff because I'm a millennial and I like to share a whole bunch of stuff that I probably shouldn't. And I essentially just just like create all my books, and that works as sort of an opportunity to sell them because they're like, oh yeah, this is something that Steve made. And so somebody, after I finished doing inventory, I had like 11 books left, 11 like coloring books left of like the Doodle Life coloring book. And so then I get an email from a company that was like, hey, we like what you're doing. Would you be able to, we're looking to buy a whole bunch of books, and we want to buy 45. And so I was like, whoa, like so much for doing inventory. Now I gotta like make more books. But it's one of those things where, like all the stuff that I do is like, I work with a local printer, and I work with a whole bunch of different artists whenever I have opportunities to do like covers and collaborate with a lot of the stuff that I do. And it's just it's an opportunity to be entrepreneurial and create opportunities for other people, and really just show what the power, like what the power people have is, to where you don't have to send stuff off to a company in order to get it. You get an extension of your creativity, an extension of your craft could be actually making the products, and it adds extra value to it. To the point where, instead of, it adds extra value to it that has a price tag to it because it's one of a kind, and you could treat it like that because and I think for people that are tired of like sort of getting this mass produced, like cookie cutter, like, product that they're getting, I think like Etsy is like a perfect example of like, there's a reason why people buy stuff from Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a handmade thing.
Handmade things. And so, I think there's a power in that. And for me, I think there's an opportunity to inject AR into that scene, into that space, and really expand on there because really like most of like the AR scene is focused on like enterprise stuff and like getting millions of dollars or billions of dollars. But if a creator or small business gets 100,000, like that's pennies for a company, but that does so much for a smaller business or an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
it speaks volumes. And so for anybody that is like interested in like AR and like hardware, invest in a good phone and look into getting one of those AR headsets, not the VR headsets, but one of those AR headsets.
Right.
Because if you could do that and build stuff around that, build experiences around that, that's something that
I'm really looking forward to Unreal.
Yeah, like not even that, just one of those, like the Google Cardboard, something like that, but just having the cutout for the camera to show, like something like kind of archaic, but like not really, because like that stuff is where I see like mass adoption happening more readily or easier than like the AR headsets, because then this is like when we're talking about the headsets, we're talking about equity here, and not equity in terms of like funding, but equity in terms of like accessibility, where with HoloLens we're saying that only a certain group of people could actually afford to do that, because they're like $3,000
or Magic Leap, right?
Yeah, or Magic Leap, or even with Unreal or Unreal. I mean, like it's great. But that thing costs more than that thing costs
more than
probably like half of your rent.
Big screen TV.
Yeah, like
right.
It's and so these we're talking about people with like very little disposable income, and so they could afford a $1 to $2 app, they could afford a T-shirt and a book, and they could afford one of those like $30 like headsets where you just put the phone in and then you have like a little cutout for your for the camera to go. and then you have an AR headset right there that won't cost you an arm and a leg, and you won't have to invest too much into it. And so like for me, like that's where sort of like my creativity is thinking about, because I'm thinking about, okay, what is the $60 investment that that people are going to do, rather than the $500
Yeah,
investment,
or 3,000.
Right.
or the
Right.
3,000.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as those things start to like go down, then I'll explore that. But
Well,
until then,
and that's where video pass through. I never even thought about video pass through being a more accessible version of AR,
yeah,
but it really is. With a with a Google Cardboard and
yeah,
video pass through, voila, you have AR.
yeah, yeah. And if you want to take it to the next level, if you have a Cricut, one of those Cricut cutters or Silhouette cameos, you can make some of those yourself.
Right. Right.
Well, we are at the 2-hour mark. Estella,
Wow.
Estella, no worries. Thank you for joining, and thank you to the Peanut Gallery. We did have one last question, which was, do you live stream on a schedule, or what if you had to give one pointer to tell people where to follow you and make sure they're up on what you're up to, what would you say?
I would say, man, I have. Whew. So
You're
I would
asking
say,
a millennial for a single point of contact.
yeah, a single point of contact. I would say I interact the most on Twitter at Stuck on an Island, and on Instagram, on Twitter and Instagram at Stuck on an Island.
All right.
That's the best way to find me. And every time I go on a live stream, I always, even though I put it on Iltopia, I stream through Iltopia, I always share it to my Stuck on an Island one. And so, yeah, I always share it to that one, because that's the one that I like interact with on for the most part. Iltopia is really just like my portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to keep it to that. And then like the Stuck on an Island stuff, Stuck on an Island started off as just like a personal blog, and so I sort of use that as an avenue to interact with people and share sort of like the behind the scenes of a lot of the stuff that I do.
Nice.
And so Stuck on an Island for pretty much everything.
All right. I just updated
Right.
the lower third again, so you can see how it's spelled. And or if you guys just come to chat.xrtalk.net, Steven's in there. He's active and responding to people and asking questions and answering questions. Thanks so much. This was a really great episode for us to come back from a little break from.
Oh yeah,
Super
Yeah, thank you so
exciting.
much, man.
definitely appreciate the opportunity. When you guys hit me up, I was like, oh, me?
Yeah. Wait. Oh, one more thing. You said you were going to be on another thing very soon, right? I want to mention that.
Yeah. I guess I'll be on the AWE like night meetup thing.
Yep.
Next week.
AWE
I wanna
night.
say next week.
Yep. Is it the AWE night SF or the?
I think so. I might be
They
that.
I think
need to,
they used to have an AWE night like per city, like an SF New York and Toronto, but
yeah.
I think now they're doing it online anyway, so they maybe just unified them all. But if you search for, just so everyone knows, if you search for AWE and it's NITE AWE night, they're on Meetup and all those things. You should be able to find the live link, and of course, we will share it through our social channels as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
Is that so I'm finishing up like the finishing touches on this using AR for activism thing.
Yeah.
And I'm essentially releasing a course talking about how to use AR for activism, and with using minimal code.
Okay.
And it's using one of the George Floyd memorial bust that somebody posted on Sketchfab. And so for anybody that's interested in sort of finding ways to use AR in sort of for social issues and talking about these things without actually really having those conversations, definitely check out that course. I think I just posted the pre-order for it on my Twitter account, and all the proceeds, it's free, but all the proceeds that for any donations are going to are going to be going to specific Black organizations that are doing stuff right now. And so definitely check that out. And I'm not taking any cut from it. Just, I'm finding ways to use the stuff that I do as an opportunity to push the culture forward in a positive way.
Yeah, that's great.
Definitely check that out.
We may
and just at the same time, I'd like to also put a shout out to Estella for her Black Rose on.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe like I feel like that could be a show into itself. Maybe we have a few people back to talk about like using AR for like social awareness and activism. Maybe we put that together real soon.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because freaking like Estella is one that like connected me with everything. I got connected with her on Twitter, and then she was like, boom, 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 assist. And so I was like, okay.
We love Estella. She is like one of the ringleaders of the Peanut Gallery. And thanks again to the Peanut Gallery. Thank you for the questions and the comments. Very supportive, always positive. Thank you so much. Yeah. I guess we will probably see you guys next week. I don't know. I think I want to keep it like non-committal. So you should make sure you follow us, and then you'll know when we're going live.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well played.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
All right.